The products that don't get talked about so much, it's either a knowledge gap around the product and how it works. It might be a knowledge gap around the customer and what they are trying to achieve. But without closing those gaps, people don't have the confidence to talk about what this product or service might do for them.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Ricky from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Mark from Thinking Focus.
I'm delighted to welcome Mark Davies to his very first appearance on The Question Is.
Hello, Ricky. Hello, everyone.
Now, Mark, you bring 20 years of experience in sales, and a great deal of your work is with sales leaders and sales managers.
That's correct. And in this 4-part series, we're going to explore those 4 areas that we often see impacting the performance of sales teams, their managers, and sales leaders.
The question is, why do people underperform? Well, this podcast is the first in a 4-part series that explores several aspects which affect the productivity of our people. So, Mark, why do people underperform?
Like you say, Ricky, we're going to look at 4 different aspects of underperformance. And today we're really going to focus on knowledge. The primary reason why people don't perform in their role is they avoid situations whereby they might get caught out. And a big part of that is knowledge. So we're going to focus on the things people need to know and how that helps them put themselves in the right place at the right time to really perform in their roles.
So when we talk about knowledge, Mark, what's in that remit? What are we kind of thinking about?
Well, knowledge comes in many different aspects, especially in complex roles. So if we think about a salesperson, for example, they need to know about their products, about the ways in which they work, but they also need to know about the competition and how your products and services stack up and relate to the competitive marketplace. There's knowledge about the marketplace itself, of course, specifically about their focused target customers and how they operate. So there are many different aspects to knowledge that help people to really perform in their individual roles.
So there's kind of role-specific knowledge. Do I know what I'm talking about? Do I know about the customer I'm talking to, using your sales role example, understand the competition? But also, I imagine there's some of the practical stuff that we want to know as well. So, how do I claim expenses? What's the budgets that we're working to? What's the process that I'm following? What's the sales process? If you continue your salesperson example, how do I if I've won a deal, what do I do next? How does that work?
Absolutely. And some of the examples you've given there are really interesting ones because you can get right under the skin of what am I authorized to do and what am I not? What are the rules around this particular engagement and how do I plot my way through the decision-making process? And many organizations have unwritten rules, things that are just the way it happens here. And a lot of people lose confidence in their ability to do the job because they don't know what those unwritten rules are. So as a manager, you've got to think about all of those things to say, am I setting my people up to perform? Or actually, are we leaving some gaps there which systemically mean that people will underperform to the potential that they have within their role?
And I think it's important probably at this stage just to say that when we believe, as an organization, we believe people underperform, not because of that they mean to, but because they can't get on their own way. And if they don't understand what's expected of me, if they don't understand what I'm talking about, then they're likely to, and I think you talk about this all the time, Mark, around they're likely to lose confidence. That will create a level of what we would describe as unhelpful thinking, which creates a level of interference, a level of or obstacles in the mind that cause me perhaps not to talk about a particular product or service. That that might mean I don't talk about a particular process or system with confidence that causes doubt in others, or actually it means I just don't do what you want me to do because I don't get it and I don't want to make a mistake.
Absolutely. And you've hit on something there that really does show out in the work I do with a lot of sales teams. That when you've got a number of different products or services in your bag, you know that there are ones that people prefer to talk about because they're really confident in their knowledge of how it makes an impact for that customer. The products that don't get talked about so much, very often there's a knowledge gap. It's either a knowledge gap around the product and how it works. It might be a knowledge gap around the customer and what they are trying to achieve. But without closing those gaps, people don't have the confidence to talk about what this product or service might do for them. So people fall into their comfort zones where they are comfortable that their knowledge works. And, there's been a big change in certainly the medical device industry over the last 10, 15 years, where the focus has shifted from clinical customers, the end users, and there is a far greater need to engage with the business customers in that marketplace these days. And a lot of salespeople haven't got the confidence to do it because they don't know, it's a knowledge gap. They don't know those stakeholders' worlds as well. And so they avoid putting themselves in circumstances where that might be exposed.
I think that's a really good point. I think, and that probably leads us into the reality that if you were to go and talk to some of the people that you've described, or any people in organisations, I imagine they've created a way of doing things. So they've normalised what they do. They've normalised how they do it. They've kind of found a way, and then if you kind of ask that person why they do what they do and why they do it in the way they do it, they kind of don't register that they've kind of formalized an informal process in some respects. And actually that almost local knowledge can trip other people up because it's probably not documented. It's probably not, formalized in a way that we would train you on it going into that, but somehow the people in the field or the people in the office have worked out how to get the job done, but it isn't necessarily in the training manual, in the process manual, and therefore people just they go, well, why didn't I know? And when you don't know, people get frustrated, like they've been left out, like they've been excluded.
Very often, working with a sales team for the first time, you have a sense that the management team are very much focused on why don't these people perform at the same level as these two or three that are really driving the business forward. And very often they spend a lot of time trying to work out and trying to fix the problem, when in reality, one of the first questions I'll always ask is, what's making those people successful? Why are they performing? Do they understand it themselves? What difference, what are they doing differently that means that they're having that impact? And very often, those successful salespeople themselves don't know. They kind of just go, well, I just do this and I don't really know why. And as a manager of a team, the first thing you must do is understand why people are doing well in order to then frame that off. Well, what are the others doing differently and how do we improve them? How do we pass those skills from one part of the team to another?
I think we've talked a lot about process. We've talked a lot about products and elements of that, but there's also some of the system stuff, and it's not just how to use the system. How do I access it? How do I update it? How do I interrogate it? How do I use it to my advantage? how do I understand the regulatory frameworks that we operate in? And I think, probably one of the most important pieces of knowledge that anybody, whatever role they perform, whether it be a sales role, an operational role, a back office role in some respects, that actually I want to know what you expect of me as my manager. So, how do I know I'm doing what you expect of me? I'm doing a good job. How do I get that feedback? How do you let me know when I'm falling below that expectation? And how do I let you know when I don't feel like I'm supported? So, how do we create that relationship from the get go that means actually the knowledge of what good looks like, how to do my job, what to do if I'm stuck, who to talk to if I need some support, help, or guidance? All of that will play out in terms of an uncertainty piece. And if I'm uncertain, then I'm probably likely to stop or do nothing, or I might do it, but half heartedly.
Yeah, I think those two options there. I think there is also a third option that people will just go off on a tangent on their own and do the wrong thing. So they'll just kind of find make their own decisions and go and do, and then are really surprised when they get pulled back and go, "Hang on a minute, we need to have a conversation." So yeah, I think there's three ways in people will respond under those circumstances. And it all comes down to creating a safe place for people to ask. You can't onboard everything in one go. And we see that a lot in highly technical roles, that you need to achieve a base level of knowledge first before you can then get into the wider detail. So we need to build this stuff up in layers. So when you're onboarding somebody into a role as a manager, which has some complexity to it, then you need to create a layered learning structure within people's induction and how they come into the organization and how they learn their role. I think most people in the learning space know that a one-off learning experience is never going to work. There is the theoretical learning experience. There is some application, and it's only when you get people to the place where they're thinking of new ways of doing things, or they're actually training or developing somebody else, that they really get under the skin of the role that they've been brought in to do.
I think that's a really good point because, you know, you've done highly technical roles, particularly in the healthcare sector. Selling really complicated products, and they would have significant impact on patient lives. I've done a similar role that's highly regulated. Certainly doesn't have the level of impact that yours does in terms of people's health, but their financial well-being is where I would have played a part. And but you're still in highly technical products, highly technical advice that you're giving, and of course that when you know that the quality of advice that you give, you need to be sure you know what you're talking about. And that in itself, that confidence factor that you talk about all the time, if I'm not confident, then I'm probably not going to deliver it with confidence. And therefore, that leads to a lack of confidence in me and my product or service that I'm offering.
Absolutely. And if you aren't confident, especially if you're in a customer facing role, the customer will smell that. It's something that is just palpable in the air. If someone is uncertain around the difference that it can make, or uncertain about some of the technical details or the broader aspects of the procedure or the offering, then the customer will smell it and it'll put uncertainty in their minds as well. So any lack of knowledge that comes over in uncertainty in the individual is naturally going to create underperformance, even if they're putting themselves in the right place. So number one, it means people make choices not to put themselves in those difficult circumstances where they might be found out if they're suffering what a lot of people call imposter syndrome. And I certainly felt a lot of that when I first moved into the orthopedic medical space as a salesperson. But also, it'll lead to underperformance because the customer will sense that there's something not quite right there. Do I have the confidence in what I'm hearing and the abilities of the person in front of me?
So, that's been really interesting, Mark. We've talked about the importance of a broad knowledge requirement for people, which is more than just, products, customers, customer, markets, competitor analysis, but it goes deeper in terms of the processes that we have to abide by, both those that are directly connected to the role and the way we perform, but also the other things around, expenses and budgets and process. But kind of at the heart of that is, as a manager, we need to make sure that you understand what's expected of you and what you can expect from me as your manager. And we should have that chat regularly, but we should certainly have it as early as possible in the relationship in order to make sure that I don't find there are times when I'm lacking confidence. Clearly, that will be the case, but I have a mechanism or an outlet in order to address that says I just didn't feel confident without feeling like I'm going to look stupid in front of my manager or my peers, because managers, they're busy. They've got probably an extensive span of control, and you don't want to be a burden to them. But equally, if you don't raise it, you're underperforming by default, not by design.
Totally agree, and that's where the building blocks, and certainly as a manager, checking on, well, what confidence do you have about the thing that we're asking you to do, or the opportunity that you're working on? What confidence is there? What would improve your confidence? What knowledge could we give you? What do you want to trial and test out? And that's where giving people the open forum and some reference points, people to go to in order to close those gaps before they do something, rather than analyze what didn't go well after the fact, is a core part of the manager's role in building that layering of knowledge we've been talking about, and creating not just greater confidence, but a sense of progression. Because someone can have a lack of confidence as they're building their knowledge early in a role. But if they can't see how they are progressing over time, then you might start to see some behaviors around lack of effort on building towards and investing in their own knowledge gain as they go through the role. So all of those things build into a progression of confidence and a progression of capability.
Okay, so let's summarize this then, Mark. So what can sales managers do from a practical standpoint? What can sales managers do practically?
Well, I think the first thing bringing anybody into a role is there a robust onboarding process that covers the essentials, takes the basics off the table, and at least establishes, one, the rules and the boundaries that they need to work within, but also where to go for the more detailed stuff as well. Where are the places that they can go to acquire the knowledge need to do the role? So that would be number one, a robust onboarding pack, a robust onboarding process.
So I imagine number two then is something that you mentioned not too long ago, which is about providing access to mentors, those who can close the knowledge gaps. I can bounce questions and ideas off without feeling stupid. But I think, one of the things I think you always talk about is making sure it's not just one mentor, it's more than one, because there's a danger that you might replicate some of their bad habits. So actually providing access to people who have been there, seen it, done it, to help me to kind of accelerate those knowledge gaps and provide a conduit to work out how to get stuff done.
You're totally right, and all I'd add into that is don't just use your superheroes on your team as your mentors. There were two things that really helped me in that experience going into orthopedics. Yes, I had the guy who was top of the team as my official mentor, but I had a territory neighbour who was the previous person to join that team as well, who I was paired up to work with and who I was closer to. The gap between me and him was smaller, and so it gave me a stepping stone to work to. But the manager I had back in those days also provided me with surgeon mentors, customers who could teach me about the product area and the procedures and the everything that we needed to know to really succeed in the role. So I had 4, maybe 5 different people that I could call on and go to as my support network as I worked into that particular business. I think there's a third area as well, Ricky, that when it comes to what a manager can do, and I think this goes through both of the previous two as well, but it's worth calling out on its own. Creating safe places where your team, your people can ask the daft questions, but also share ideas, share things that they might do differently, and those things that they are having the thoughts that are maybe unhelpful as well. So to help them work through maybe some of that negative talk that we often see coming up in multifunctional teams, that they can work through that in a place where they know it's not going to be judged and people aren't going to be critical of them, that allows them to get that stuff out of their way and help them to perform.
Brilliant. So, provide robust onboarding information, take those basics off the table so people aren't concerned or worried about them. Provide access to a range of mentors that will help me to be more effective in my role, and create that safe space where people can share unhelpful thoughts, ask the daft questions, and just surface things that are bothering them.
Next time on The Question Is.
Well, I mean, when you take the Ebbinghaus effect, which, knowledge, 80% of that knowledge is gone within a week, hasn't it? If you're not applying that knowledge in practice on things that are relevant and contextual to the role that you do.
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com, where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.